All right, to use a sum and difference formula here, the hard part is splitting up the angle inside a tangent. So my thought is I want that denominator to not be a 12. I want it to be a 4, a 3, or a 2, or even a 6. Because if I can simplify a fraction so that the denominator isn't a 12 and it's one of those numbers, I can use the unit circle. So my first thought was, well, let's just try 2 pi over 12. What would I have to add to 2 pi over 12 to get 19 pi over 12? And I would do 17 pi over 12. The 2 pi over 12 is good because I could simplify that. And then I would have a denominator down here of 6. But I can't simplify the 17. So this one didn't work out. So next I tried 3 pi over 12 and 6 pi over 12. This is good because I can simplify this one and I can simplify this one. And when I do simplify those, this is what it looks like. I get 4 pi over 3 right here, and then over here I get pi over 4. And those two angles are both inside my unit circle. So that's one way you guys can sit and try to figure out how to split up the angle inside a tangent. Another way is to take, I think this way is the harder way, is to take all the angles that you know, like you know pi over 6, you know pi over 4, you know pi over 3, and you know pi over 2. And what you can do is you can make all of these have a denominator of 12. And so this would be a 12, this would be a 2, this would be a 12, this would be a 3, that would be a 12, this would be a 4, and to make this one a 12, this would be a 6. And then you can look at these angles right here and try to split this guy up with these angles. And that's one way to do it. Actually, I mean, that's another way you can do it. Okay, so once you find two angles that will add up to the angle inside of the trig function, you can then use a formula. Okay, so I checked on Google Classroom. I re-put the link on there to get to the formula sheet, the trig formula sheet. But here are all the formulas for the addition and subtraction, the sum and difference formulas, and then you also have the double angle formulas right there. We're going to use this guy because we're adding in tangent. Now you can use different angles. You do it differently the way I set it up. Like we wrote all those guys up here. If you can subtract in some way to get this, you can subtract two angles to get that. You would just use a different formula. It's really neat because you'll actually get the same answer. So if I plug in my angles into the tangent formula, this is what I got. I get tangent of pi over 4 plus tangent of 4 pi over 3. And then tangent of pi over 4 is multiplying the tangent of 4 pi over 3 on the bottom. Now, I know that at 4 pi over 3, we have rad 3 over 2 for the y, and then we have 1/2 for the x. Remember, dividing a fraction is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, so when I rewrite it, I can see that the 2's cancel out. So this is just going to be rad 3. And then on the bottom, I have 1 times rad 3. You're just taking the two results up there and multiplying them together for your formula. All right, so now I have 1 plus rad 3 over 1 minus rad 3. In Algebra 2 trig, you guys know that you can't leave the answer with the square root on the denominator, so I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate of the denominator. So I just have to rewrite the same thing and change the sign of one of these terms. This term and this term. You just have to change the sign of one of them. Usually, we like to change the sign that is for that term. So that's what I did. I did 1 plus rad 3, and at the top, what we get is 1 times 1, which is 1, 1 times rad 3, which is rad 3, and then we have rad 3 times 1, which is rad 3, and then rad 3 times rad 3, which is rad 9. That was this guy times this guy, and this guy times that guy. Rad 9 simplifies to a 3, and then on the bottom we have, since they're, what is that called? A difference of squares. So all you have to do is square the first term and then minus square the second term. When I square the second term, I get square root of 9, which is 3. So when I rewrite this, I get -2 on the bottom. I get a 4 on top, and I get 2 red 3s. And then I divide each of these terms. I divide the 4 by -2. I get -2, and I divide the 2 red 3 by -2, and I get minus red 3, and there's my answer.